You need to leave this seat immediately. Why does the airline allow people like you on the plane?
You have made a big mistake.
Ma'am.
The stories shared on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment. Any similarity to real events, individuals, or locations is entirely coincidental.
Welcome to Unseen Power. We hope you enjoy the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts by leaving a comment below the video.
Remove them. Now, or I'm not flying. The words didn't just cut through the first-class cabin. They froze it. A glass hovered mid-air. Ice clicked once, then went still. Somewhere behind row 3, a seatbelt snapped shut and then stopped halfway, like even the smallest sound had second thoughts. Margaret Whitmore stood in the aisle of Flight DL-12, spine straight, chin lifted, her hand trembling not from fear, but from certainty. 52 years old. Blonde hair sculpted into something too perfect to move. Chanel jacket, diamond bracelet catching the cabin light like a warning. She wasn't asking. She was deciding. And in front of her, seated calmly in row 1, was a man who didn't move. Dr. Marcus Johnson didn't raise his voice, didn't stand, didn't even blink right away. He sat exactly as he had been, one hand resting lightly on the armrest, the other holding a tablet he no longer looked at. 45, tall, broad-shouldered, navy suit cut with surgical precision. The kind of presence that usually made rooms adjust themselves around him. But not this room. Not today. Because in Margaret's world, something about him didn't fit. And she couldn't tolerate that. "You heard me," she said again, slower now, each word pressed flat with control. "I paid for exclusivity. I'm not sitting next to them." Them. The word hung in the air like smoke. Beside Marcus, his wife, Dr. Angela Johnson, shifted slightly in her seat. Not away, not defensive, just enough to place her hand gently over her daughter's wrist. A small, quiet gesture. Protective. Grounded. Her eyes moved once, briefly, to Marcus, then back to Margaret. Measured. The children behind them had gone still. Their earlier laughter, soft and warm, now swallowed whole by the tension that filled the cabin like pressure before a storm. At the front, Emily Carter didn't move right away. 38 years old. 2 decades in the sky. She had seen arguments, drunks, panic attacks at 30,000 feet, people who lost it over missing chicken or delayed boarding. But this was different. This wasn't chaos. This was deliberate. She stepped forward slowly, heels barely making a sound against the carpet. "Ma'am," Emily said, voice calm, controlled. "Everyone in this cabin has a valid ticket. I need you to lower your voice." Margaret turned her head just enough to look at her. Not fully, not respectfully, just a glance. "You need to fix this," Margaret replied. "Now." Behind her, a man in seat 3A lifted his phone. Quietly, almost instinctively. His thumb hovered, then pressed record. The red dot appeared. Something in the room shifted. Emily saw it, felt it. That invisible line where a private moment becomes public, where consequences begin to take shape. "Ma'am," Emily said again, firmer now. "There is nothing to fix. They are seated correctly. Margaret laughed. Short. Sharp. Empty. Correctly? She repeated. You're telling me this is correct? Her hand moved then, not wildly, but precisely. A small tilt of her fingers toward Marcus and his family, as if pointing at something that didn't belong in her living room. I know how this works, she continued, voice rising just enough to carry. Last-minute upgrades, employee favors. I'm not stupid. Marcus finally looked up, slowly. His eyes met hers. No anger, no fear, just something colder. Ma'am, he said, voice low, even. We purchased these seats months ago. Margaret's lips tightened. That's not possible. Angela spoke, this time. Soft, clear. It is. Margaret's gaze snapped to her. For a second, something flickered across her face. Not doubt. Not yet, discomfort. Because Angela didn't look uncertain, didn't look apologetic. She sat there with a quiet confidence that didn't ask for permission, and that unsettled Margaret more than anything. I'm not arguing with you, Margaret said, turning back to Emily, dismissing them both with a flick of her wrist. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to move them to the back. The word back landed harder than anything else she had said. A few rows behind, someone shifted in their seat. Another phone lifted. Emily's jaw tightened. No, she said. Just that. One word. Flat. Final. Margaret blinked. Once. Like her brain needed a second to process what she had just heard. No, she repeated. Emily held her ground. They stay, she said. Or you can choose not to fly. The air changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But completely. Margaret's eyes widened, just a fraction, then narrowed. You're making a mistake, she said, voice dropping now, colder. Do you know who I am? Emily didn't answer, because it didn't matter. And that was new. For Margaret, that was the first crack. Behind her, the man in 3A leaned forward slightly, adjusting his angle. He wasn't hiding it anymore. Neither were the others. Screens glowed faintly in the dim cabin light. This wasn't just happening. This was being watched, documented, saved. Margaret turned slowly, taking in the room, the faces, the silence, the phones. And something in her chest tightened. Not fear. Not yet. But pressure. Because for the first time in a long time, the room wasn't bending. It was holding. And directly in front of her, Marcus Johnson didn't look away. Didn't shift. Didn't give her anything to push against. He just sat there. Still. Unmovable. Like a man who had already seen how this would end. And wasn't the least bit concerned. Margaret Whitmore had spent her entire life in rooms that bent. Country clubs where conversations paused when she entered. Charity galas where people laughed a second too long at her jokes. Boardrooms where her husband's name opened doors before she even spoke. She didn't earn authority. She absorbed it. And now, standing in the narrow aisle of a commercial aircraft, she felt something she had not felt in decades. Resistance. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her Louis Vuitton tote. The leather creaked softly, a small, sharp sound in a cabin that had gone too quiet. "You're not understanding the situation," she said, slower now, voice dipping into something colder, more deliberate. "I am a Diamond Medallion member. I've flown this airline for years. I spend more in a month than most people on this plane make in a year." No one responded. Not Emily. Not the passengers. Not even the man in 3A, who was still recording, his phone steady, his expression unreadable. Margaret felt the silence press in. It wasn't agreement. It wasn't submission. It was judgment. Her eyes snapped back to Marcus. He hadn't moved. That irritated her more than anything. Because men like him, in her experience, always reacted. They explained. They apologized. They tried to smooth things over. He did none of that. He simply existed. Calm, unbothered, unmoved. And that made her feel smaller. The thought hit her, and she rejected it instantly. No, not smaller. Threatened. "There's a standard here," she said, louder now, her voice cutting through the cabin again. "A certain level of clientele. A certain atmosphere." Angela's hand tightened slightly over her daughter's wrist. Not out of fear, out of awareness. She leaned forward just enough, her voice quiet but clear. "And what exactly is that standard, ma'am?" Margaret turned to her, eyes narrowing. "You know exactly what I mean." Angela held her gaze. "No," she said. "I don't." The words landed softly, but they landed. A man in row 2 shifted. Someone behind him exhaled slowly, the kind of breath people take when they know something is about to tip. Margaret laughed again, but this time it sounded thinner. "Oh, please," she said. "Let's not play games." Marcus set his tablet down, carefully, deliberately. The small click against the armrest echoed louder than it should have. He straightened slightly in his seat, shoulders rolling back, posture settling into something firmer. Not aggressive, not defensive. Established. "Ma'am," he said, voice low, controlled. "We are not playing anything. We are sitting in seats we paid for. That is the beginning and the end of it." Margaret's lips parted. For a second, no words came out. Because the tone wasn't emotional. It wasn't reactive. It was final. And she wasn't used to final. Behind her, Emily took a slow breath. She had seen this shift before. The moment when a passenger stopped reacting and started standing. That was the moment things escalated. "Sir," Margaret snapped, recovering, her voice sharpening. "I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to the airline." Marcus didn't respond. He just looked at her. And in that look, there was something unmistakable. Not anger. Not even annoyance. Assessment. Like he was measuring her, weighing something she couldn't see. Margaret felt it, and it unsettled her. "You're being incredibly inappropriate," she continued, turning back to Emily, grabbing onto something familiar. Authority, structure, rules she believed she owned. "I feel unsafe." The word dropped into the cabin like a stone. unsafe. A ripple moved through the rows. A woman in row 4 frowned. A man across the aisle leaned forward slightly. The phones didn't lower. If anything, they steadied. Because everyone understood what that word did. Emily's expression hardened. "Ma'am," she said, each word precise. "Nothing about this situation is unsafe." Margaret's voice rose. "Excuse me. You are the only one raising your voice. You are the only one creating a disturbance. That is what is making this environment uncomfortable." The air tightened. Margaret's face flushed, a slow, creeping red that started at her neck and climbed upward. "I am uncomfortable," she said, louder now, her composure slipping at the edges. "I am being forced to sit next to people who—" She stopped. Not because she chose to. Because something in the room shifted again. Heavier this time. The kind of shift that comes right before something irreversible. Marcus leaned forward. Just slightly. "Enough." "Finish that sentence," he said quietly. No one moved. Even the engines outside seemed distant now. Margaret stared at him. Her chest rose, fell, her mind raced, searching for control, for dominance, for the upper hand she always found. But it wasn't there. Not here. Not now. "People who what?" Marcus asked again. Still calm. Still measured. And somehow that made it worse. Margaret swallowed, then doubled down. "People who don't belong here." There it was. Clear. Undeniable. A few passengers looked away. Not out of agreement. Out of discomfort. Others leaned in. Because now it was no longer implied. It was spoken. Documented. Real. Angela exhaled slowly. Not surprised. Just tired. "You don't get to decide that," she said. Margaret snapped back instantly. "Yes, I do." "No," Angela replied. "You don't." The exchange was simple. But it carried weight, because beneath it sat something larger than the two women. Larger than the cabin. Larger than the flight itself. Something old. Something ugly. Something that had learned to hide behind words like standard and comfort and safety. Margaret felt the room slipping, and she couldn't allow that. Not here. Not in front of all these people. Not in front of cameras. Her hand shot out suddenly, grabbing Emily's wrist. "Get the captain," she said, voice tight, controlled, but cracking underneath. "Now." Emily looked down at the hand on her arm, then back up at Margaret. Slowly. "Ma'am," she said, voice dropping, colder now. "Remove your hand." Margaret didn't. For half a second, too long. That was all it took. Emily pulled her arm back sharply. "Do not touch me again," she said. The words hit harder than anything before them, because now the roles were shifting, and Margaret felt it. The ground wasn't just resisting anymore, it was tilting. "Get the captain," Margaret repeated, louder now, her voice breaking through the last layer of control. "I want him here, right now. I want this handled." Emily held her gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once. Not in submission, in decision. "Fine," she said. "I'll get the captain." She turned, walked down the aisle. And for the first time since this began, Margaret Whitmore was no longer the one in control of what happened next. Inside the cockpit, the air felt different, quieter, colder, controlled. Captain David Brooks sat forward in his seat, eyes scanning the instrument panel with the kind of focus that came from decades in the sky. 55 years old, former Air Force, 20,000 flight hours, every movement precise, every decision measured. Nothing on this aircraft moved without his say, and he preferred it that way. The checklist in front of him was nearly complete. Fuel level stable, weather over the Atlantic clear, departure window tight but manageable. Everything exactly as it should be. Then the door buzzed, a sharp, clipped sound. Not routine. David didn't look up right away. "Come in," he said. The door opened. Emily stepped inside quickly, closing it behind her. Her shoulders were tight, her breathing just a fraction off rhythm. David noticed immediately. He turned. "What is it?" Emily hesitated for half a second, not because she didn't know what to say, because she knew exactly what it meant. "We have a situation in first class," she said. David's eyes narrowed slightly. "Mechanical? No. Medical? No." That left one thing. Passenger. David leaned back slowly, studying her. "Talk to me." Emily crossed her arms briefly, then dropped them, grounding herself. Seat 1A. Margaret Whitmore. Diamond medallion. She's demanding we remove the passengers in 1D and 1G. David's expression didn't change. "Why?" Emily held his gaze. "Because they're black." The cockpit went still. The first officer, Mark Reynolds, mid-30s, hands still hovering over the flight computer, stopped typing. For a moment, no one spoke. David looked down at the panel, not reading it, just looking. Something settled in his chest, not explosive, not visible, cold, efficient. "Anything else?" he asked. Emily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She called them criminals, said she felt unsafe, told me to move them to the back. When I refused, she demanded you, gave an ultimatum. David's jaw tightened slightly. "What ultimatum? It's her or them." Mark let out a quiet, disbelieving exhale. David didn't react, not outwardly. He reached up slowly, adjusting the 4 stripes on his shoulder. The fabric was smooth beneath his fingers. Familiar. Earned. Every hour, every flight, every time he had walked into a room and felt eyes on him before he even spoke. He had learned a long time ago how to carry that, how to outwork it, outlast it, outfly it. He stood. The motion was calm, deliberate. "Engines stay off," he said. Mark nodded immediately. "Yes, Captain." David reached for his hat, placed it on his head with practiced precision, adjusted his tie once. Then he looked at Emily. "She wants the captain?" he asked. Emily nodded. She was very specific. David gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Good." He stepped toward the door. Paused. "Just for a second. Let's go see what she wants." He opened it. The sound of the cabin rushed in, not loud, but charged, like air before a lightning strike. They stepped out into the galley. Conversations weren't happening. Not really. It was something else. A low, tense murmur. The kind that forms when people are watching something unfold in real time. David could hear her voice before he saw her. Absolutely unacceptable. I have never in my life been treated like this. Do you know who my husband is? Of course. He walked forward. 1 step, 2. Then through the curtain. The first-class cabin came into full view, and just like that, everything stopped. Not gradually, instantly. Phones paused mid-recording. Heads turned, bodies straightened. The shift was physical, because authority had entered the room. Margaret stood in the aisle, back straight, chin lifted, still mid-rant. She didn't see him right away. David took 1 more step forward. "Excuse me." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried. Margaret turned. Fast. Relief flashed across her face first. Finally. Then she saw the uniform, the stripes, the hat, the authority she had been demanding. And then she saw his face. The relief vanished, replaced by something else. Confusion, disruption, a split-second fracture in the version of events she had constructed in her head. "You're the captain?" she said. David stopped in front of her. "I am Captain Brooks," he replied, "commander of this aircraft." His voice was even, neutral, but there was weight behind it. Margaret blinked, her brain working quickly now, recalculating, adapting. But pride moved faster. "Yes, well," she said, straightening, trying to recover her footing. "Good, because there is a serious problem here." David didn't respond. He just looked at her, waited. Silence stretched. Margaret filled it. "These people," she said, gesturing sharply toward Marcus and his family without looking at them, "are in the wrong section. They're disruptive, aggressive. I do not feel safe sitting next to them." The words came out faster now, less controlled, because something about the man in front of her wasn't reacting the way she expected. David turned his head, looked at Marcus. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, not personal, not familiar, but understood. David turned back. "Sir," he said, addressing Marcus, "have you been aggressive toward this passenger?" Marcus shook his head once. "No, Captain." David nodded. "Ma'am," he said, looking back at Margaret. "Based on what I'm observing, there is no safety issue here." Margaret's face flushed again. "You weren't here," she snapped. "You didn't hear what he said." "What did he say?" David asked. Margaret hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, because now she had to say it again, out loud, in front of him. He spoke to me in a threatening tone," she said. "It was inappropriate." David didn't blink. "Sir?" he said again, eyes still on Marcus. "I asked her to let us fly in peace," Marcus replied. That was it. No embellishment, no defense, just the truth. Margaret's voice jumped an octave. "He's lying." The word echoed. Flat. Ugly. David let the silence sit. Then he spoke. "Ma'am," he said, voice lower now, "I'm going to ask you one more time. What exactly is the issue?" Margaret stared at him, and then she made her choice. Not to step back, not to de-escalate, to commit. Fully. "I don't think it's appropriate for people like them to be in first class," she said. "It ruins the experience. I paid for a certain caliber. I feel threatened by their presence." There it was. No filter, no disguise. Just truth. Raw. Exposed. The cabin didn't move. Didn't breathe. Because everyone knew. This was the point where everything would change. And directly in front of her, Captain David Brooks finally made his decision. Captain David Brooks didn't answer right away. He stood there, looking at Margaret Whitmore the way a pilot studies a storm on radar. Not emotional, not reactive, just measuring distance, intensity, and trajectory. Because once you commit to a direction at 30,000 feet, you don't get to change your mind halfway. The silence stretched. Margaret felt it, and misread it. Of course she did. She lifted her chin slightly, mistaking stillness for hesitation, for weakness, for something she could still bend. "Well," she pressed, "are you going to handle this or not?" David's eyes didn't move. "Handle what?" he asked. The question landed like a crack. Margaret blinked. "The situation," she said, irritation sharpening her tone. "The problem." David tilted his head slightly. "I don't see a problem," he replied. The words didn't come loud, but they hit hard. Margaret's mouth opened, then closed. "I just explained it," she said, voice tightening. "They don't belong here." David took one step closer. Not aggressive, not confrontational, but enough to shift the balance. "Ma'am," he said, voice even, "you are not the authority on who belongs on this aircraft." Something in the room shifted again. A man in row 3 leaned back slowly. A woman across the aisle lowered her phone just enough to take in the moment with her own eyes. Margaret felt it slipping. The control, the narrative, and she grabbed for it. "I am a paying customer," she snapped. "A very valuable one." David nodded once. "So are they." "That's not the same," she fired back instantly. "Why not?" he asked. The question hung there. Simple. Direct. Unavoidable. Margaret's chest rose, fell. Her mind searched for something cleaner, something safer, something that didn't sound like what she had already said. But there wasn't anything. Not anymore. Because the room had heard it, recorded it, locked it in. "You know exactly why," she said finally. David didn't blink. "No," he said. "I don't." And that was the moment. The moment where she could have stopped. Stepped back. Let it go. But pride doesn't step back. Pride doubles down. "It's obvious," Margaret said, voice rising again, sharper now, fraying at the edges. "Look at them." The word look landed heavier than anything before it, because now it wasn't hidden. It wasn't cool-hold. It was direct. And the room felt it. Angela's hand tightened slightly again. Not shaking, not weak, just grounded. Present. Marcus didn't move, didn't react. He just watched. And that unnerved Margaret more than anger ever could. David followed her gesture, looked at Marcus, at Angela, at their children, then back at her, slowly, deliberately. "What exactly am I supposed to be looking at?" he asked. Margaret laughed, but it came out brittle. "Oh, come on," she said. "Don't pretend." "I'm not pretending," David replied. He took another step, close enough now that she had to tilt her head slightly to keep eye contact. "I'm asking you to say it clearly." The words dropped like weight. Margaret felt something shift in her chest. Pressure, heat, eyes, so many eyes. She could feel them now, not just around her, on her. Phones lifted, screens glowing, faces watching, not with curiosity anymore, but expectation, waiting, for her to either stop or cross the line completely. Her throat tightened. For a split second, something flickered. Doubt. But then it was gone, replaced by something stronger. Ego. "I shouldn't have to spell it out," she said, voice cold again, trying to reclaim control. "You're the captain. You're supposed to maintain standards." David nodded slowly. "I do." Margaret leaned in, just slightly. "Then do your job." The challenge was clear now. Open. Public. And she thought she had him. Thought she had pushed him into a corner where authority would force him to side with her. Because that's how her world worked. Money spoke. Power followed. Always. David let a breath out through his nose. Then he reached up, slowly, and unpinned the wings from his chest. The small metal emblem came free with a soft click. The sound echoed. Too loud for something so small. Margaret frowned, confused. "What are you doing?" she asked. David didn't answer. He removed his hat next, set it gently on the empty seat beside him, then looked back at her, and when he spoke again, his voice was different. Lower, heavier, final. "If you refuse to fly with black passengers," he said, each word deliberate, "then you cannot fly with me." The sentence didn't land all at once. It unfolded, word by word, until it reached her. Margaret froze. "What?" David didn't move. "I'm black," he said. Simple. Undeniable. The room didn't breathe. It couldn't, because the ground had just disappeared beneath her. Margaret's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Her brain scrambled, trying to rearrange the situation into something that made sense again, something she could control. But there was nothing left to rearrange. Only truth, standing right in front of her. She started. Stopped. For the first time since this began, she had nothing. David watched her. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, just with clarity. So he continued, voice steady. "If you feel unsafe with them, you should feel unsafe with me." Margaret shook her head slightly. "No, that's not..." It is exactly that, David cut in. Not louder, but sharper, enough to stop her. He turned slightly, addressing the cabin now. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, voice carrying clean and clear. This aircraft will not be departing. A ripple moved through the rows. Confusion. Shock. What? Margaret snapped, her voice breaking. You can't do that. David looked back at her. I can, he said. He picked up his flight bag. Calm. Unhurried. I will not operate this aircraft in a hostile environment, he continued, and right now, this environment is compromised. Margaret's composure shattered. This is ridiculous, she said, louder now, desperation bleeding through. You're overreacting. You're being emotional. David didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't explain. Because he didn't need to. He stepped past her, close enough that she had to move slightly out of his path. Instinct, automatic. And as he passed, he paused. Just for a second. Good luck getting to London, Mrs. Whitmore, he said. Then he walked, down the aisle, through the galley, out of the aircraft, and didn't look back. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the cabin exploded. The sound didn't come all at once. It started low, a ripple. Voices rising in disbelief, overlapping, colliding, building into something louder, sharper, harder to contain. What do you mean the flight's cancelled? You've got to be kidding me. I have a connection in London. Margaret Whitmore stood in the centre of it. Still. Frozen. Her eyes locked on the empty aisle where Captain David Brooks had just walked away. For a second, her brain refused to process it. Captains didn't walk off. Pilots didn't leave. That wasn't how the world worked. Not her world. Not ever. Get him back, she snapped suddenly, turning on Emily, her voice cutting through the noise like glass. This is absurd. He can't just leave. Emily didn't move, didn't flinch. She stood there, shoulders squared, watching Margaret with a look that had changed completely. There was no customer service left in it, no patience, no performance. Just distance. I can't order the captain to do anything, Emily said. Margaret blinked. You can call him, she insisted. You can tell him to come back here and do his job. Emily shook her head once. Slow. No, she said. The word hit harder this time. Because now Margaret understood. There was no one above him. No one to override him. No one to fix this. The system she had relied on her entire life had just stepped out of the aircraft and taken control with it. I demand, Margaret started. Demand what? A voice cut in from behind her. She turned. A man in row 4 stood up. Mid-40s, construction hoodie. Hands rough, calloused. The kind of man Margaret wouldn't normally notice. Now he was looking straight at her. You just got this whole plane grounded, he said. Margaret's eyes widened. I did no such thing, she snapped. The captain overreacted. Laughter. Sharp. Disbelieving. From somewhere in the cabin. Overreacted? A woman near the aisle repeated. You told him you wouldn't fly with black people. Margaret turned toward her. That is not what I said. Oh, I got it, another voice called out. Jason Reed. Seat 3A. Still holding his phone, still recording. He stood now, lifting it slightly. "I got everything," he said. "Clear as day." Margaret's stomach dropped. Just a fraction, but enough. The phones, all of them, still up, still pointed, still watching. This wasn't contained anymore. This wasn't private. This wasn't fixable with a phone call or a donation or a favor. This was everywhere. "You need to stop recording," she said, her voice tightening, reaching for control that wasn't there anymore. Jason didn't lower his phone. "No," he said. Simple, flat, final. And that word again. "No." It echoed, because now it was coming from everywhere. "I have a wedding tomorrow," someone shouted from the back. "I'm going to miss it because of you." "My sister's in the hospital," another voice added. "This was my only flight tonight." "This is unbelievable," someone muttered. The pressure built. Faster now. Voices stacking on top of each other. Anger rising. Not controlled. Not polite. Real. Margaret stepped back slightly. Just one step. But it was enough, because for the first time, the crowd wasn't background. It was focused. On her. "You're all being ridiculous," she said, louder now, her voice climbing, trying to overpower the room. "You're blaming the wrong person." He walked off. He's the one who left. No one agreed. No one nodded. No one supported her. And that silence was louder than anything else. From the cockpit, the door opened. Mark Reynolds stepped out, flight bag over his shoulder, cap in his hand. Margaret saw him, latched onto him instantly. There. That was her way back. "You," she said, pointing, her voice snapping back into something sharper, more focused. "You can fly this plane." Mark stopped, looked at her, then at the empty cockpit, then at the passengers, then back at her. "I'm the first officer," he said. "Exactly," Margaret replied quickly. "So go in there and do your job. We're all waiting." Mark stared at her for a long second, then shook his head. "No." The word hit again, harder now, because it was everywhere. "You're kidding," Margaret said, a laugh slipping out, thin, strained. "You're just going to let him ruin this flight?" Mark took a step closer. Not aggressive, but firm. "I can't legally fly this aircraft across the Atlantic without a captain," he said. "And even if I could, I wouldn't." Margaret blinked. "Excuse me?" Mark's jaw tightened slightly. "If Captain Brooks says this environment is unsafe," he continued, "then it's unsafe," Margaret scoffed. "Unsafe?" "I am the one who said I felt unsafe." Mark's expression didn't change. "You're the reason it is," he said. The words landed clean. No emotion, no hesitation, just truth. Margaret's face flushed again. Deeper now. Hotter. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "You're all overreacting." Mark tilted his head slightly. "For the record," he added, almost as an afterthought, "my wife is black." The sentence dropped into the room like weight. Margaret froze, because now it wasn't abstract. It wasn't distant. It was personal, immediate, real. I guess you wouldn't feel safe with me flying you either. Mark finished. No one spoke, because there was nothing left to say. Mark adjusted his grip on his bag, looked once more at Marcus. A small nod. Respect. Then he turned, walked down the aisle, and followed his captain off the aircraft. The cockpit door stood open now, empty, dark, a hollow space where control used to be. The realization hit the cabin all at once. This plane was not going anywhere. Margaret felt it too. Not fully. Not all at once. But enough. Enough for something cold to settle in her chest. This wasn't a delay. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was consequence. And it had just begun. The silence didn't last. It broke under the weight of movement. Seatbelts unclicked. Overhead bins snapped open. Voices rose, sharper now, less controlled, less polite. People were standing, leaning into the aisle, looking for someone to blame. And every line of sight led back to Margaret Whitmore. She felt it before she fully understood it. The shift, the way the air moved differently around her now. Not deference, not space. Pressure. You need to fix this, she said again. But the words sounded thinner now, stretched, fragile in a way she didn't recognize. She turned to Emily, stepping closer, lowering her voice like they were still in some private negotiation. Call someone higher up. Corporate. Operations. Someone who actually understands how to handle clients. Emily didn't step back, didn't soften. There is no higher up on this aircraft than the captain, she said. Margaret shook her head, quick, sharp, dismissive. No, that's not how this works. But even as she said it, something inside her knew. It was. And that was the problem. Behind her, the murmur grew louder. Not just frustration now. Anger. Focused. You cost us this flight, a man said from somewhere behind row 5. My daughter's waiting in Heathrow, another voice added. Do you understand that? Margaret turned, her expression tightening, eyes scanning the faces now staring back at her. Not politely, not quietly, directly. Judging. You're all overreacting, she snapped. This is a staffing issue. The captain chose to leave. Because of you, someone shot back immediately. The words came faster now. Stacking. Piling. She said it. I heard it. She told him she wouldn't fly with black people. This is insane. She thinks she owns the plane. Margaret's chest tightened. Not fear. Not yet. But something close. Because the room wasn't listening anymore. It was responding. And she wasn't controlling it. Jason Reed was still standing in the aisle, his phone steady, angled perfectly. The red recording light blinked. Relentless. He stepped forward slightly. Say it again, he said. Margaret turned sharply. What? What you said to the captain, Jason replied. Say it again. The challenge wasn't loud, but it cut deeper than shouting. Margaret stared at him. Because now it wasn't about convincing staff or demanding authority. It was about being seen. Fully. Clearly. Recorded. And she didn't like how that felt. You're harassing me, she said. Jason didn't lower the phone. No, he said. I'm documenting you. A few people nodded. Subtle, but visible. Margaret felt it. That shift again. That slow, steady loss of ground beneath her feet. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, turning away, scanning for something familiar. Someone who would step in, restore order, restore her place. Instead, she saw Emily, standing still, watching, not intervening, not rescuing, just letting it unfold. "Do something," Margaret demanded. Emily met her gaze. "I already did," she said. Margaret's jaw tightened. "You let the captain walk off." "I supported my captain's decision," Emily corrected. The distinction hit harder than the words. Supported, not allowed, not permitted. Supported. That meant agreement. That meant alignment. That meant Margaret was alone. The realization landed, not all at once, but in fragments. The empty cockpit, the passengers turning, the phones recording, the crew no longer bending. It started to piece together. And with it came something new. A flicker. Small, unwelcome. Doubt. "No," Margaret said under her breath, shaking her head slightly, like she could push it away. "No, this is temporary. This gets fixed. It always gets fixed." But her voice didn't carry the same weight. Not anymore. At the front of the cabin, Emily reached for the intercom. The click echoed. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice steady, controlled, "please remain calm. We are currently coordinating next steps with ground operations. Local authorities have been notified and will be boarding shortly." Police. The word didn't need to be said out loud. It was understood. Margaret stiffened. "Police?" she repeated, louder now, turning back toward Emily. "For what?" Emily didn't answer her. She didn't need to. Because the answer was already moving down the jet bridge. Heavy footsteps, measured, approaching. The door at the front of the aircraft opened. 3 officers stepped inside. Port Authority police, uniforms crisp, faces neutral, eyes scanning. The room shifted again. Not chaotic now. Contained. Focused. Authority had returned, but not the kind Margaret expected. The lead officer stepped forward, broad shoulders, mid-40s, calm in the way that comes from doing this too many times to be surprised by anything. "Who's the disruptive passenger?" he asked. The question didn't hang. It landed, and every head turned. Toward Margaret. She felt it like impact. But she straightened anyway. Lifted her chin, smoothed her jacket, stepped forward. "Officer, thank God," she said, her voice snapping back into something familiar. Controlled. Practiced. "I'm Margaret Whitmore. The captain has abandoned this aircraft over a personal disagreement. I need you to have him brought back immediately. This is unacceptable." The officer looked at her, then at Emily, then back at her. Slow. Careful. Assessing. Emily spoke. She refused to sit next to a family based on race, she said clearly. Then told the captain she wouldn't fly with him because he is black. The captain deemed the environment unsafe and removed himself from duty. The words were clean, precise, unemotional, but they carried weight. The officer's expression changed, not dramatically, but enough. His jaw tightened slightly. His eyes hardened. He turned back to Margaret. "Ma'am," he said, voice firm now, "I'm going to need you to gather your belongings." Margaret blinked. "What?" "You're being escorted off the aircraft." The sentence didn't compute. Not at first. "I'm not going anywhere," she said immediately. "You need to find another pilot." "The flight is cancelled," he replied. "That's not my problem," she snapped. "It is now," he said. Margaret's breath caught, just for a second, because something in his tone told her this wasn't negotiable. "I am not leaving," she repeated, louder now, her voice rising again, reaching for control that was slipping faster with every second. "Do you know who my husband is?" The officer didn't react, didn't blink, didn't shift. "I don't care if he plays golf with the president," he said. "You're causing a disturbance in a secured federal area. You're leaving." The words landed like a door closing, firm, final. Margaret's fingers tightened around her bag. Her heart beat faster now. Not controlled, not steady, something else, something unfamiliar. Because for the first time, this wasn't about status, or money, or influence. This was about consequence, and it had finally caught up to her. Margaret Whitmore did not move. For a second, her body simply refused. The command had been clear, the tone unmistakable, the authority undeniable. And still, she stood there, because nothing in her life had prepared her for this moment. "Ma'am," the officer repeated, slower now, his hand hovering just inches from her elbow. "This is not a request." Margaret's eyes flicked down to his hand, then back up to his face. Something tightened in her chest. Not anger this time. Something sharper, more fragile. "No," she said, shaking her head once, her voice thinner than she intended. "No, you don't understand. This is a misunderstanding. I didn't do anything wrong." Behind her, the cabin shifted. Not loudly, but enough. A low murmur, a few sharp exhales, the kind of sound people make when they've already made up their minds. The officer didn't argue, didn't debate. He stepped closer. "Ma'am, you need to come with us now." Margaret took a step back. Just one. But it changed everything. Because now it wasn't defiance. It was resistance. "I am not being treated like this," she snapped, her voice rising again, grabbing onto the last fragments of control she had left. "You should be removing the captain." He abandoned his post. "That's illegal." The officer's expression didn't shift. "Ma'am," he said, "you have two options. You walk off this aircraft, or you are escorted off in restraints." The word restraints landed hard. Heavy. Real. Margaret's breath caught. Her eyes dropped again. This time to his belt, to the metal glint of handcuffs, and something inside her cracked. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. Around her, phones lifted higher, closer. The red lights blinked, unforgiving. Jason Reed adjusted his grip, stepping slightly to the side to keep her in frame. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to, because the moment was speaking for itself. Margaret looked around, really looked, for the first time since this began. She saw the faces, Not background, not noise. People, watching, judging, recording, and none of them were on her side. Not one. "You're all insane," she said. But the words came out softer now, weaker, like they had lost their weight somewhere between her mouth and the air. "This is completely out of proportion." No one responded. No one defended her. Even the silence had turned against her. The officer stepped closer again. "Last chance," he said. Margaret swallowed. Hard. Her throat dry. Her hands trembling slightly now, though she tried to hide it by tightening her grip on her bag. "I will leave," she said quickly, the words rushing out, controlled but brittle. "But this is not over. I have lawyers. I have connections. You have no idea what kind of mistake you're making." The officer nodded once. "Grab your things." Margaret reached up, opened the overhead bin. Her bag was heavier than she remembered, or maybe her arms were weaker. She pulled it down, the edge catching slightly, forcing her to adjust her grip. The movement was clumsy, unpolished, unfamiliar. A few rows back, someone laughed. Quiet, but audible. Margaret froze for a fraction of a second, then forced herself to move. Step forward. Another. The aisle felt narrower now, longer, every step heavier than the last. And as she walked, the sound began. Slow at first, a single clap, sharp, deliberate. She turned her head slightly. Jason Reed. Still holding his phone. Clapping. Once, twice. Then someone behind him joined. Then another, and another, until it spread, row by row, seat by seat. A wave of sound rolling forward, clapping. Not celebratory, not joyful. Something else. Judgment. Public. Unfiltered. Margaret's face burned. Hot. Her vision narrowed. She kept walking because there was nowhere else to go. By the time she reached the galley, the sound had changed. Clapping mixed with voices now. Louder. Rougher. Good riddance. You did this. Unbelievable. And then from the back, someone started it. Low, mocking, "Na na na na, hey hey hey, goodbye." Laughter followed. Harsh, unrestrained. Margaret's steps faltered, just slightly, but enough for the officer beside her to place a firm hand at her back. Guiding, not gently. Forward. The door to the jet bridge opened. Cold air rushed in. Sharp. Real. Margaret stepped through, and the sound followed her. Echoing. Fading only as the door closed behind her. Silence hit her like impact. Sudden. Complete. She stood there for a second. Just stood. The noise gone. The eyes gone. The pressure gone. And yet, it felt worse. Because now there was nothing to distract from it. From what had just happened. The officer motioned forward. "Keep moving." Margaret nodded stiffly. Walked. The jet bridge felt longer than it had minutes ago. Every step heavy. Her heels clicking against the metal floor. Too loud. Too empty. At the end, the terminal opened up. Bright lights. People moving. Normal life continuing. As if nothing had just collapsed. But it had. She could feel it, in her chest, in her stomach, in the way her hands wouldn't stop shaking. They walked her past the gate, past the waiting area. People looked. Some recognized her already. Phones lifted again. Whispers started. Is that her? That's the woman from the plane. No way. Margaret's heart pounded. Faster now, harder. She tried to straighten her posture, lift her chin, rebuild something, anything. But it didn't hold, because the foundation was gone. Completely. At the exit of the secured area, the officer stopped. You're free to go, he said. Just like that. No ceremony, no transition. One moment, she was being escorted. The next, she was alone. Margaret stood there, her bag heavy at her side, her mind racing. Her world shifting faster than she could keep up. She reached for her phone, hands unsteady, unlocked it. Dozens of notifications, then hundreds. Messages, alerts, tags, mentions. Her screen flooded faster than she could read. She frowned, confused, then tapped one. A video. Thumbnail frozen on a frame she recognized instantly. Herself, standing in the aisle, finger raised, face tight with anger. The caption above it, Woman refuses to fly with black captain. Flight cancelled. Margaret's stomach dropped. Hard. She tapped play and watched, herself unravel. By the time Margaret Whitmore stepped out onto the curb, the world had already moved on without her. The night air hit her face, cold and sharp, carrying the distant hum of traffic and the constant churn of JFK. Cars pulled up. Doors slammed. Luggage rolled. People hugged, laughed, complained. Life continued, just not hers. She stood there, blinking under the harsh white lights, her phone still in her hand, vibrating relentlessly. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It wouldn't stop. She looked down. Notifications flooded the screen faster than she could process them. Messages, mentions, tags, alerts from apps she hadn't opened in months. Her name. Everywhere. She tapped one. A video loaded instantly. No buffering. No delay. Too many people were watching. The screen filled with her own face. High definition. Unforgiving. Her voice came through the speakers, louder than she remembered. I'm not flying with them. The clip cut. Then another angle. You need to remove them. Then another. If they stay, I'm not flying. Her chest tightened. She scrolled. Another video. This one closer, clearer. Captain Brooks, standing in front of her. If you refuse to fly with black people, then you can't fly with me. The comments rolled beneath it like a current she couldn't escape. Disgusting. Ban her from every airline. This is why people like her think they're untouchable. Instant karma. Margaret's fingers trembled. She backed out of the video, opened another app. Instagram. Her latest post. A glass of champagne in the lounge. Caption. London bound. It had thousands of comments. Not admiration. Not praise. Hate. Raw. Direct. I hope you never get on a plane again. Racist. You're everything wrong with this country. Margaret's breath quickened. her chest rising faster now. She tapped another notification. Twitter. Trending. Her name. Margaret Whitmore. #1. Her face filled the screen again. Freeze frames from the video. Headlines already forming. Wealthy socialite grounds. Flight after racist outburst. Captain walks off in protest. A hero. That word appeared over and over. Hero. Not her. Him. Captain Brooks. Her stomach dropped further, because the narrative had already locked in. There was no version of this where she came out right, no angle, no spin, no control. Her phone rang. She stared at it. Richard. Her husband. Relief hit instantly, sharp, immediate. She answered. Richard, thank God, she said, the words rushing out, desperate, unfiltered. It's a mess. The airline, stop talking. His voice cut through her. Cold, flat, unrecognizable. Margaret froze. I just watched it, he said. A pause. Heavy. Loaded. What exactly did you think was going to happen? Margaret swallowed. It's not what it looks like, she said quickly. They're twisting it. The captain overreacted. I was uncomfortable. You said you wouldn't fly with black people. The words landed like a hammer. Margaret opened her mouth. Closed it. Because there was no version of that sentence that sounded better when repeated. I didn't mean it like that, she said weakly. Silence. Then a sharp exhale on the other end. It's everywhere, Margaret, Richard said. Everywhere. I've had calls from the firm, from investors, from the board. Her grip tightened on the phone. They're overreacting, she said, but the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. This will pass. It always does. No, Richard said. One word. Final. This doesn't pass. Margaret's chest tightened again. A different kind of pressure now. Slower. Heavier. What are you saying? She asked. I'm saying you've made me a liability. The word hit harder than anything else. Liability. Not partner. Not wife. Not equal. A problem. Margaret shook her head, though he couldn't see it. You can fix this, she said quickly. Call someone. Issue a statement. We've handled worse. No, Margaret, he said, voice dropping even lower. You handled this. On your own. Another pause. Longer this time. I'm not sending the driver, he added. Margaret blinked. What? I can't have my car picking you up right now. There are cameras everywhere. Reporters are already calling. Her breath caught. You're leaving me here, she said. I'm protecting what's left, he replied. The words were calm, measured, strategic, and completely devoid of emotion. I'll have legal reach out, he continued. We need to separate from this, from you. The line went dead. Margaret lowered the phone slowly. The noise of the airport rushed back in. Louder now, harsher. Cars passing, voices overlapping, footsteps echoing. She stood there, alone. Her reflection faint in the glass doors behind her. But it didn't look like her. Not the version she recognized. Not the version that walked into that plane. Her phone buzzed again. A new notification. Ride request unavailable. Account temporarily suspended. She frowned, opened the app. Error message. Violation of community guidelines. Her stomach twisted. She tried another. Same result. The gig platforms moved fast, faster than she expected, because this wasn't just viral. This was toxic. She looked up. A group of teenagers walked past. One of them slowed, looked at her, eyes narrowing. Recognition. Wait, he said, pulling out his phone. That's her. Margaret's chest tightened. No, she muttered under her breath. Too late. The phone was already up. Recording. Yo, it's the plane lady, the kid said, voice loud, excited. She's right here. More phones, more eyes, more attention. Margaret grabbed her bag, turned, walked. Fast. Then faster, her heels hitting the pavement too hard, too loud, the sound echoing behind her like something chasing. Hey, wait! Someone called out. She didn't stop, didn't look back. She pulled her blazer up slightly, trying to cover her face. Her movements rushed, uneven, unfamiliar. Because she had never run like this before. Not from anything. Not from anyone. The sidewalk stretched ahead, endless, cold, unforgiving. And for the first time in her life, Margaret Whitmore had nowhere to go. 3 weeks later, Margaret Whitmore collapsed in front of a corner store in Queens. The morning had started with a headache. Not unusual. She had been waking up with them every day now. A dull pressure behind her eyes that never fully left. Sleep came in fragments. Food tasted like nothing. The world felt louder than it should, brighter than it had any right to be. But this one was different, sharper, deeper. It pulsed behind her right eye like something alive, something pushing outward, trying to break free. She pressed her fingers to her temple as she stepped off the curb, the city moving around her in fast, indifferent rhythms. Cars passing, people walking, no one looking twice, no one recognizing her anymore. That had changed too. The first week had been noise, cameras, comments, messages, her face everywhere. Now it was quieter, but not better, because the silence wasn't forgiveness, it was replacement. The world had moved on to the next outrage, and left her behind with the consequences. Margaret reached for the door handle of the store. Her hand missed. Not by much. Just enough. She frowned, blinking hard, trying to refocus. Come on, she muttered under her breath, reaching again. This time her fingers brushed the metal, slid off, uncoordinated. Her heart skipped. Something wasn't right. She opened her mouth. Excuse me, she tried to say. The words didn't come out right. They came out thick, slurred, wrong. The man behind the counter looked up, confused. Margaret tried again. Help. The floor rushed up to meet her, hard, fast. Everything went black. When she woke, it wasn't quiet. It was mechanical, a steady beeping, rhythmic, unforgiving. She opened her eyes slowly. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar, white, flat, fluorescent lights humming softly. Her body felt heavy, weighted, like something was holding her down from the inside. Ma'am, can you hear me? A voice. Close, professional. Margaret turned her head slightly. The movement felt slow, delayed. A doctor stood beside her bed, clipboard in hand, eyes focused but calm. Where am I?" she asked. Her voice sounded thin, foreign. "You're at New York Presbyterian in Queens," the doctor said. "You were brought in unconscious." Margaret blinked, trying to piece it together. "The store," she murmured. I was walking." "You collapsed," the doctor confirmed. "You suffered a ruptured cerebral aneurysm." The words landed slowly, like they needed time to translate. "Aneurysm?" she repeated. "Yes." Her chest tightened. Her aunt had died from that. Years ago. Quick. Sudden. No warning. "Am I dying?" she asked. The doctor didn't hesitate. "You were," he said. Margaret's breath caught. The word hung there. Heavy. Unavoidable. What happens now?" she asked. The doctor shifted slightly, his expression tightening just a fraction. "The location of the rupture is complex," he said. "Near the brain stem. It's extremely high risk. Most surgeons won't attempt it." Margaret's fingers twitched against the sheets. Fear. Real fear. Not social, not reputational, physical, immediate. "So you can't fix it," she said. "I can't," he replied. "And our head of neurosurgery won't." The room felt smaller, tighter, the machines louder, the air thinner. Margaret's vision blurred slightly. "No," she whispered. "No, there has to be someone." "There is," the doctor said. The word cut through everything. Margaret looked at him. Hope. Sharp. Desperate. "A visiting specialist," he continued. "He's one of the best in the world. He happened to be in the city for a conference." Margaret exhaled, a shaky breath. "Thank God," she said. "Then do it. Call him. Whatever it takes," the doctor nodded. "He's already here," he said. "He reviewed your scans. He believes he can perform the procedure." Margaret's chest loosened slightly, the pressure easing. "Just a little." "What's his name?" she asked. The doctor hesitated, just for a second. Then the door opened. "Ready for transport," a nurse said. They began moving her bed. The wheels rolled smoothly beneath her, the ceiling lights passing overhead in steady intervals. Margaret stared up at them, counting without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. Her heart beat faster again. But this time, not from pain. From anticipation. Relief. She was going to be saved. She had always been saved. That's how her life worked. They pushed her through double doors into a pre-op area. Cooler. Brighter. Sterile. The nurse stopped the bed. "Doctor," she said. "The patient is here." Margaret turned her head. Slowly. A man stood at the sink. Back to her, washing his hands, methodical. Precise. He turned, and the world stopped. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. Completely. Because she knew that face. She had seen it before, not here, not like this, but unmistakable. Dr. Marcus Johnson, the man from seat 1G, the man she had pointed at, dismissed, reduced, the man she had called less. Her breath caught. The monitor beside her spiked. Beep, beep, beep. Faster, louder. You, she whispered. He looked at her, not surprised, not angry, just aware. I'm Dr. Johnson, he said calmly. I've reviewed your case. Margaret's chest tightened, hard, because the realization hit all at once. Full force. Her life, her actual life, was now in the hands of the man she had tried to remove from her world. You can't, she said, her voice breaking. You hate me. The nurse glanced between them, confused. Marcus stepped closer. Not rushed, not hesitant, controlled, professional. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, voice steady, grounded. I took an oath. The words were quiet, but they carried. I treat patients, he continued, not opinions, not behavior, not history. Margaret stared at him, searching for anger, for resentment, for something, anything. She found nothing, only competence, clarity, control. The same stillness he had carried on that plane. Only now it held her life. You have a basilar aneurysm, he said. It's actively leaking. Without intervention, you have approximately 2 hours. 2 hours. The number echoed. Loud. Final. Margaret's vision blurred. Tears, hot, immediate. She started. Stopped. Because nothing she had ever said mattered here. Not status, not money, not power. Just time. And she was running out of it. Her voice dropped, small, barely there. I'm sorry, she whispered. The words felt unfamiliar, heavy, real. Marcus held her gaze, for a moment, then nodded once. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, acknowledgement. We'll talk later, he said. He turned to the nurse. Let's prep, he added. The mask came down over Margaret's face. Cool, plastic. The smell of anesthesia filling her lungs. Her eyes stayed on him, on his hands, steady, certain. The same hands she had dismissed. The same hands now reaching for the tools that would decide whether she lived or didn't. Darkness closed in. And for the first time in her life, Margaret Whitmore had no control over what happened next. The first thing Margaret Whitmore felt was pain, not the sharp, tearing kind that had dropped her to the pavement weeks before. This was different. Dull, heavy, deep. A steady ache that pulsed behind her eyes, slow and controlled, like something healing instead of breaking. She opened her eyes. The light above her was softer this time, warmer, filtered. Machines still hummed, but the rhythm had changed. No urgency, no alarms, just quiet monitoring. You're awake. A nurse stood beside her, adjusting the IV with practiced hands. Margaret blinked. Her throat felt dry. What happened? She whispered. The nurse smiled slightly. You made it, she said. Surgery went well. It was close for a while, but he stabilized you. He. Margaret's eyes shifted. Slow, searching. Dr. Johnson, she asked. The nurse nodded. He saved your life. The words settled over her. Not dramatic, not loud, just absolute. Margaret closed her eyes briefly, breathing in, out, alive. Because of him. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time moved differently now, slower, heavier, each second more deliberate than the last. When the door opened again, Margaret didn't need to turn her head. She knew. The sound of measured footsteps, the pause at the threshold, the quiet control in the air that entered with him. Dr. Marcus Johnson stepped inside, not in scrubs now, in a navy suit, sharp, clean, uncompromising. He looked exactly the way he had on that plane. Only now, there was distance, not physical, something deeper. Margaret tried to sit up. Her body resisted. He raised a hand slightly. "Don't," he said. She stopped. Not because of weakness, because of the tone. Still calm, still even, still final. "Your body needs time," he continued. "The repair was successful, but recovery will take weeks." Margaret swallowed. Her hands rested on the blanket, fingers slightly curled, unsure what to do with themselves. "Thank you," she said. The words came out stronger this time, more certain. "I know what you did. I know you didn't have to." Marcus studied her. Not long, not intensely, just enough. "I did have to," he said. Margaret blinked. "What?" "I'm a surgeon," he continued. "That's my job." The distinction was clear, precise. He didn't save her because of who she was. He saved her despite it. Margaret felt the weight of that, settling in, deeper than anything else. "I was wrong," she said. Her voice didn't shake, didn't rise, didn't defend, just acknowledged. Marcus didn't respond. He walked to the foot of the bed, checked her chart, clinical, detached. "I said things that," she continued, the words slower now, heavier, like they cost something to release. "I've never said out loud before." "Not like that." Marcus looked up. "Not out loud," he repeated. The words weren't harsh, but they landed. Margaret flinched, just slightly, because he wasn't arguing. He was clarifying. "I can change," she said quickly. "I want to." Silence. Not long, but long enough. Marcus closed the chart, placed it down. "I repaired the aneurysm," he said. "That's what I do." He paused, looked at her. "You'll live," he added. The sentence should have brought relief. Instead, it felt like something else, incomplete. "I can't repair your life," he continued. Margaret's breath caught. Not sharp, not panicked, just aware. "There are consequences," he said. "Some of them don't go away." The room held the words, didn't soften them, didn't dilute them, just let them exist. Margaret nodded slowly, because for the first time she understood, not intellectually, not defensively, completely. I understand, she said. Marcus studied her one last time, then nodded. Once. Rest, he said. He turned, walked to the door, stopped. Not for her, for himself. Then left. The door closed behind him with a quiet click. Margaret lay there, still, the room silent again, but not empty, because something had changed. Not outside, not yet. Inside, recovery took time, weeks, then months, slow progress, measured steps. Each day, forcing her to confront something she had spent her entire life avoiding. Herself. 6 months later, the bell above the door rang. A small diner in Tulsa. Fluorescent lights, worn booths. The smell of coffee and grease settled deep into the walls. Margaret moved behind the counter, her uniform simple, her hair pulled back without precision, grey roots visible, her hands steady, but not soft. Coffee, she asked. Her voice was quiet, neutral. The man at the table nodded. She poured. The liquid dark. Bitter. Steaming. On the small television mounted in the corner, a news segment played. And in other news, Captain David Brooks and Dr. Marcus Johnson have officially launched their foundation. Margaret's hand paused. Just for a second. She looked up. There they were, standing side by side, suits pressed, posture straight. Two men who had turned a moment into something larger than themselves. The initiative aims to support underprivileged youth entering aviation and medical fields. Marcus spoke. Calm, measured. Sometimes difficult moments create necessary change, he said. Margaret watched, didn't blink, didn't move. Because she understood something now. She had been the moment, the catalyst, the fracture that forced everything else to realign. Not because she intended it, because she couldn't see beyond herself. Ma'am? The customer's voice pulled her back. She blinked, looked down. The coffee cup was full, her hand still hovering. Sorry, she said. She set the pot down, turned away. The television continued behind her, but she didn't look again, because she didn't need to. She already knew how the story ended. Not with her. Never with her. She picked up a cloth, wiped the counter. Slow, deliberate. Each movement steady, grounded, real. And somewhere between the sound of dishes clinking and coffee pouring, between the quiet routine of a life rebuilt from nothing, the lesson settled in fully. Not as punishment, not as regret, as truth. Some people spend their lives trying to decide who belongs, and lose everything when they're finally forced to realize they never had that power at all. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments with 3 simple words. Instant karma lesson.